Hi everyone, for my mixed genre presentation, I decided to go around the central theme of kindness. And so for my first piece, I'm going to be reading a part in the movie Freedom Riders. It's about a time in LA where racial tensions were really high, but a teacher gave her students the opportunity to come together and put everything aside and just become who they really were outside of gangs and family issues and things like that. And so this is the part where she says, her name is Erin. She says, "Thank you all very much. Now I have something for each of you. Everyone has their own story, and it's important for you to tell your own story, even to yourself. So what you're going to do is we're going to write every day in these journals. You can write about whatever you want, the past, present, and future. You can write it like a diary, or you can write songs, poems, any good thing, bad thing, anything. Keep a pen nearby, but you have to write every day, wherever you feel the inspiration, and they won't be graded. However, how can I grade an A or B for writing the truth, right? And I will not read them unless you give me permission. I will need to see that you've made an entry, but I will do this and skim the page you wrote that day. Now, if you want me to read it, I have a cabinet over here. It has a lock on it. I will keep it open during class, and you can leave the diary in there if you want me to read it. And I will lock this cabinet at the end of the day. Okay, so you can each come up one by one and take your own journal whenever you're ready." By doing this, she gave them something to call their own, because a lot of them had never even had like a new book or something that was really theirs. And this small act of kindness allowed them to kind of feel like their own person. And then I'll be reading a short story called The Elves and the Shoemaker by Simon Hood. Once there lived a kind but exceedingly poor shoemaker. He was honest, hardworking, but he had fallen on hard times. So hard, in fact, that he could no longer make ends meet. All that remained in his workshop was enough leather to make a single pair of shoes. In the light of the setting sun, he carefully cut out the last piece of fine leather and neatly laid it on his workbench, ready to finish his work the following day. He closed the door of his workshop, let out a heavy sigh, and returned home to be with his wife. "Take my hand, dear," he said. "Let us make our wish for our fortunes to change and for our years of hard work to finally bring us the ample reward that we deserve." His wife stretched out her arms, laid her hands softly into his, and made their wish. The shoemaker rose early the following morning. As usual, he ate his breakfast, brushed his teeth, and gave his wife a kiss on the cheek, and made his way to the workshop. He was expecting to find his workbench just as he had left it, with his carefully prepared leather ready to be made into one of his finest shoes. But it's not what he found. To his astonishment, upon the workbench shone a fully stitched, expertly crafted, shiny pair of shoes your eyes could behold. They were perfect, immaculately finished to a standard that he himself would have been proud to put his name on. He stood there for a minute, utterly dumbfounded. "I don't believe it," he thought to himself. Suddenly came a loud rap at the workshop. A well-dressed man entered and said, "Good morning, kind sir. I was passing, and that pair of fine shoes on your workbench caught my eye. Could I please try them on?" "Why, yes, of course," said the shoemaker. Then he knelt down and tried on the shoes. "Just as I suspected," said the man. "A perfect fit. I'll take them." What happened next shocked the shoemaker, perhaps even more than the appearance of the shoe. The man asked the shoemaker for the price of the shoe. The shoemaker told him, and this was the man's reply. "Nonsense!" cried the man. The shoemaker looked disappointed. "I mean to say," the man continued, "the quality and workmanship is plain to see, and I will not pay a penny less than double what you asked." The shoemaker thanked the man dearly for his generosity. That man smiled, doffed his hat, and strode out the door, wearing his new and very shiny shoes. With the money that he had received from selling the shoes, the shoemaker went out and purchased more leather. This time he had enough leather to make 2 pairs of shoes. In the light of the setting sun, he carefully cut 2 pieces of fine leather and neatly laid them on his workbench, ready to finish the work the following day. The next day arrived. To his astonishment, the same thing had happened again, but this time there were not one pair of shoes on his workbench, there was two. And as before, the quality of the workmanship was so exquisite that the two well-dressed men came in to his workshop and paid twice the asking price. This continued day after day, with the things taking from the day the shoemaker would buy enough leather to prepare twice the number of shoes for the following day, and every morning the shoes would be immaculately prepared, polished, and stacked on his workbench ready to be sold. 4 pairs, 8 pairs, 16 pairs, 32 pairs. The pattern carried on for weeks until the shoemaker was selling many thousands of pairs every single day, each as expertly crafted as the last. The shoemaker and his wife were no longer poor. In fact, they had become quite rich from selling so many shoes. One night, the shoemaker turned to his wife. "Dear wife, I feel so blessed for our wonderful fortune of late, and I long to know the secret behind the shoemaking magic, so we can show our deepest thanks." "Perhaps we should stay up tonight," replied his wife. "We can creep down to the workshop by candlelight." The shoemaker agreed. That very night, as the clock struck midnight, they each lit a candle, silently made their way to the workshop, and peered through a slightly open window. What they saw was so magic, and it instantly took their breath away. The elves and an army of elves filled the workshop. Each elf was no more than 6 inches tall and sat up on a tiny wooden stool, working furiously, 1 elf per shoe. They rapped and tapped and hammered and stitched at such rapid pace you could barely see their little arms at all. 1 elf stood out. She was not hammering nor stitching. Instead, she was standing in front of the workshop, facing the other elves, like the conductor of a mini orchestra. She wore a tall, pointed hat with the words "Grand High Elf" neatly embroidered on the front. Suddenly, the candle slipped from the shoemaker's grasp and landed with a thud upon the stone floor. Hearing this, all the elves froze in terror. A moment passed, and the Grand High Elf cried, "Everybody run!" And that was it. The scene that ensured nothing short of a pandemonium. The elves, scattered in a frenzy, attempted to flee the workshop as fast as they could. "Please wait," cried the shoemaker. "We are here to say thank you," said his wife, "for all the amazing hard work and kindness, and we would like to show our appreciation by doing something kind in return." As the panic subsided, all of their eyes fell to the Grand Elf. She stepped forward and said, "We are hungry and the clothes on our backs are threadbare. Would you be so kind to feed us and replace our clothes? We would forever be in your debt." The shoemaker lay down on the ground, his face now level with the Ground Elf. He smiled at her and said gently, "Of course, Your Highness, we will gladly give you all the food and clothes you desire. And please forgive me, but I have noticed that your feet are bare. I'd like to make you each a pair of my finest shoes." She smiled back. "That would be wonderful," she replied. From that day forward, the elves, the shoemaker, and his wife became the very best of friends. They worked hard and went on to live a happy and prosperous life together. The end. I think in the world that we live in today, we could all just use a little bit of kindness, and both the movie and the short story go hand in hand, that just showing someone a little act of kindness, regardless of how small it could be, would go a very long way for everyone. Thank you.